Back on Get Up, we'll get back to all the hoops in a minute, but OTAs continuing around the NFL. I want to dive into an NFC edition of Are You Convinced? I have Mike Tannenbaum and Dan Graziano with us this morning. Mike T, are you convinced Caleb Williams is the right quarterback to lead the Bears back to glory?
I am not greedy. I work with Ben Johnson in Miami, the new head coach of the Bears. He is going to be a rule-based, disciplined play caller and coach. When you have 68 sacks, look, the Bears were not great in coaching, not great in personnel last year, but you have to bear some of that responsibility. No team has done more for their quarterback in this offseason than the Bears. We'll see if he gets better, but I am concerned by his lack of discipline and his fundamentals. That's going to not allow him to maximize his potential.
Graziano, what sense are you getting out of there?
Yeah, I think they feel like it's a ground-up situation with Caleb Williams, building from the ground up because of what Mike T said. That was something that followed Caleb Williams into the league, right? Can he play on schedule? Can he operate in the confines of an offense? And I think Ben Johnson is the kind of creative offensive mind that can figure out a way to maximize strengths and minimize weaknesses and maybe iron some of that stuff out. We've got to see it. I mean, the word convinced is a tricky one here because I don't think we have enough data on Caleb Williams in the NFL to be convinced one way or the other. But the Bears are banking on Ben Johnson as the guy that can figure out how to get the absolute best out of him while minimizing the issues that Mike T is talking about.
We have the voice of Bears Nation with us this morning, Michael Wilbon. As you hear all of this, what is your sense of, how would you describe your confidence that they have finally found what they have been looking for a century?
For 60 years, I have followed every move of this team.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating, 60. What I know for certain is the Bears are going to screw up the quarterback situation. They're going to draft the wrong guy. They're going to have the wrong coach. They're going to coach that guy poorly. Okay, that I know. That is not the case here.
Ooh.
Okay, and I'm paying attention in a way that not either of these two guys who've forgotten more football in general than I'll ever know.
Right.
That is not the case with Caleb Williams. And the notion that he is somehow undisciplined and can't play on schedule is a function of coaching. And last year he didn't have to do that. He wasn't required to do it. He didn't even know how to do it. He is going to be coached. One of the things that is not criticized enough, and Greeny, you know I've said this privately to you, and because so many ex-coaches on TV, coaching.
Yeah.
NFL coaching is not looked at critically enough with a critical eye. Ben Johnson seems to be exactly what the Bears and Caleb Williams need. Did you hear Ben Johnson in his very first press conference talk about what he was going to do? Tear it down to the studs and build it. That is exactly what Caleb Williams needs. They went out and got every weapon for him. If anybody who doesn't see and listen to Caleb Williams and think he's not a sponge who's willing and able to do this, we are on separate pages, and I don't believe a word of that. And I'm a guy who knows that the Bears are going to get it wrong for 100 years. This, they're going to get right.
Okay, so the voice of the Bears has spoken. Let me get one more for you, Mike T. The Cowboys went 7-10 last year. Are you convinced they bounce back and make the playoffs this coming season?
No, but they are greatly improved, Greeny. And you and I both know Brian Schottenheimer really well. He has done a really good job with quarterbacks over his career. If Dak Prescott can stay healthy, this will be a really good offense. Tyler Booker, outstanding first-round pick at guard. Hembo just gave me a great stat. George Pickens, over the last 3 years, Greeny, leads the NFL in yards per reception at 16.8. And when he's complimenting number 88, who we're looking at here, those are two frontline receivers. This will be a fun offense.
Absolutely. A lot of attention was given to something that the Cowboys' new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, said yesterday. Let me play it for you. He was asked about the development of one of his backup quarterbacks, and he offered this about his starter.
I think they all are. I mean, I think Dak is in the developmental phase, and that sounds crazy for a guy that's played that much, but, like, there's things that we're tweaking with Dak. The minute these quarterbacks think that they've figured it all out, that's when it's probably time for them to think about doing something different because the way defenses attack in this league, it makes it almost impossible to ever relax.
Graziano, what do we think of that?
Hey, look, it's a thing a coach says, right? It makes sense. I think if Dak Prescott had a press conference today and was asked about those comments, he would say that he agrees with it. You're always trying to find ways to get better. You're always trying to find things to work on and improve. So I think that's Brian Schottenheimer being a new coach at a press conference saying new coachy type of things about his quarterback. But, I mean, the point is a legitimate one. If Dak Prescott's entering year 10, to think that he's a finished product and has everything figured out, I think would be the height of arrogance for anyone. And I think if you ask any quarterback that's lasted a long time in the NFL, they would all tell you there's still things they're working on to improve every single offseason.
Not only that, but the great ones know it and internalize it. J-Mac told a great story when he was here one time about when he got to New England. Tom Brady was already the greatest quarterback of all time. And he watched one day in the locker room as Tom Brady was just by himself practicing handoffs, practicing taking the snap and doing a handoff, taking a snap and doing a handoff. This is a guy who at that point had won 5 or 6 Super Bowls. And yet he's doing that stuff. That work never ends. And so, yes, Brian Schottenheimer is saying what coaches say, but I think it makes sense.
It makes sense. I don't know what it means. I don't know what kind of connection.
How good are the Cowboys going to be this year? How good are the Cowboys going to be this year?
They can be a 10 or 11 win team.
Yes.
But you know, the notion that the Cowboys are now prepared to go on some great run, how often are we going to be fooled by the Cowboys? And by the way, they have had those 12 win seasons successively. So maybe I am undervaluing what the Cowboys are going in. But so much of this is going to depend on Dak coming back. And by a lot of it's just talking about coaching is Schottenheimer, who's proven nothing, who has everything to prove. We talk about coaches with a lot to prove. Schottenheimer's got even more to prove than Ben Johnson coming into this season.
Yeah. He was a surprise pick by a lot of people. I think he's going to do a good job. I think the Cowboys managed to win 7 games last year. I mean, Graziano said it better than anybody. No team has added a better quarterback this offseason than the Cowboys have. They're getting Dak Prescott back. Danny, you said that the other day. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. Let's do a fun Flashback Friday, shall we? This was the day that our beloved Adrian Wojnarowski retired from ESPN. Adam Schefter went on NBA Today and said this.
I'm going to take the New York Knicks versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I'm going to crown Oklahoma as the new NBA champion. And if they do go ahead and win it, I will officially be applying to take over Woj's job and become the new NBA insider.
Is there anything that man can't do? I ask you. How about Graziano? Your reaction?
I mean, that's why he is who he is, man. Like, that's it. Like, he's months ahead of the rest of us, as usual.
Adam Schefter, maybe look, it could still happen. We'll see. The Knicks need 2 more wins for that to come entirely true, but it's not impossible. Okay, let me get back to the NFL here. Earlier in the show, we did an NFC edition of Are You Convinced? Let's look at a couple of AFC storylines this morning. Mike T, you're my general manager. Are you convinced Shedeur Sanders will start for the Browns this season?
Yes, from snap one, day one, he absolutely should start for a number of reasons. He should compete with Dylan Gabriel. I think he's a better player. Candidly, I don't think it's that close. And at the end of the year, the Cleveland Browns need to know what they have in Shedeur Sanders because they're going to have a top 5 pick. They have Jacksonville's first-round pick. If Jacksonville struggles, which I think they will, there's, as you know, Greeny, loaded quarterbacks in 2026. They need to know what their quarterback in the future looks like. Joe Flacco is a great backup, and at some point, trade Kenny Pickett.
Graz, what would Cleveland's ideal quarterback scenario be?
I think it'd be to be able to pick whoever they want in next year's draft. I mean, look, like Shedeur Sanders was picked 2 rounds after Dylan Gabriel. He's 4th on their depth chart right now. I'm not saying it's impossible for him to move up and get some starts, but I don't think the Browns are looking at it right now on May 31st the way that Mike T says. I think, you know, first of all, they're going to try and win games. If Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett gives them the best chance to win week 1, I think that's who will start. But they like Dylan Gabriel 2 rounds more than they like Shedeur Sanders. I would think he's got a chance to get the first look if they're trying to figure out rookies that they need to learn things about this season.
Mike T, just quickly, what he's saying makes sense. I get it. I was there. I saw them draft Dylan Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders, quite literally, and all I do is aggregate information before the draft. I had never seen anyone project that. Not one evaluator had projected Dylan Gabriel to go ahead of Shedeur Sanders, which is why I remain so puzzled by the way that broke down. Give me your sense. If this season doesn't start out looking like they're going to be a contender, which it doesn't, then it doesn't figure figure that it makes sense that they play Joe Flacco a whole lot this year. He's 40 years old. So I like your scenario there, Mike T.
Yeah, and what Graz is saying is very logical, which is Dylan Gabriel's a third-rounder, and he should be the priority. But look, when you put the pieces together, clearly Dylan Gabriel impressed Cleveland in the pre-draft process, and I'm sure they thought there's no way Shedeur Sanders is going to be part of the mix for us once they decide not to take him in the first round. So I think that was an opportunistic pick by the Browns. But look, if you go by what you see once they start playing, and as Hembo reminded me, Shedeur Sanders led the nation in completion percentage. He's a more talented quarterback, in my opinion, and I think others. He's going to have to prove it on the field. But I think if it was a fair fight on the field, I think Shedeur beats out Dylan Gabriel. And again, Joe Flacco is going to be 40 years old. He's your perfect backup bridge quarterback. Go see what Shedeur has, then you can plan your future.
Right. That's what I expect as well. But, of course, there are a million different ways that could go. Let me go to the AFC West. The Chiefs have won that division for 9 straight seasons. Graziano, are you convinced they make it 10?
I'm not, but Greeny, you got to understand, convinced is the wrong word for me on May 31st. Like, I'm not convinced of any of this stuff. But I will say this, I think it's going to be a tougher race in the AFC West for the Chiefs than they have had in more than half a decade. The Denver Broncos are a playoff team last year that in the first game at Arrowhead that they played, they were a blocked field goal away from beating the Chiefs. They have improved significantly on defense. Their quarterback is heading into his second year. The Los Angeles Chargers, coached by Jim Harbaugh, had a great first year. They should be even better. I think those are two teams in the Chiefs division that are set up to give them a stronger push than they've gotten from anybody in quite a while.
I agree. And for what it's worth, the Raiders tend to play them tough, and I think they're going to get better with their new coach and situation there as well. Mike T., how about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I disagree. Look, I think what Graz said, those teams are improved, but when Patrick Mahomes is protected, and it's either going to be Jaylen Brown or more likely Josh Simmons if he's healthy, Patrick Mahomes had a lot of issues with protection last year. If that's cleaned up with Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rashid Rice pending suspension, this offense could get back to being the explosive offense we've seen Patrick Mahomes had a couple years ago. So I'll take Mahomes and a great offensive line, and I'll give you the rest of the division.
Okay, fair enough. Then, Mike T., let me give you one more. Josh Allen and the Bills came up one game short, as they so frequently seem to, last year. They are favored on ESPN Bet in every one of their games this season. Are you convinced they're the best team in the AFC right now?
No, but boy, it's close. I'm going to go with the Chiefs, but it's by a whisker. This team got a lot better, like you said, the offseason. Hopefully they get something out of Joey Bosa, TJ Sanders, a good second-round pick. They brought back Tre'Davious White, drafted Max Hairston. So I think the Bills are better, Greedy. I just can't go against Patrick Mahomes with a good offensive line. I could see an AFC title game probably back in Kansas City with these two teams.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, look, you could make a case that heading into that game last year, the AFC Championship, hey, the Bills are the better team. That doesn't mean they're going to beat the Chiefs head-to-head in a playoff game. We've seen it time and again. I think the Bills are a candidate for this. I think the Baltimore Ravens are a strong candidate for this, and obviously you can't rule out the Chiefs. But Buffalo is set up, man. Their schedule is soft. They leave their time zone exactly once all regular season. If Buffalo doesn't have the 1 seed going into the playoffs, I think they'd be a little disappointed.